Hello again. Here we are, midday, nearly lunchtime. So this is the hard shift. This is the one where, again, everybody's tummies are rumbling. You're ready to go grab your sandwich or something a bit more substantial, and there's only one thing in the way. Well, we found you a really good bit in the way, and this is ASHISH. I'm not going to tell you all about him because he will tell you about himself. But most importantly, he'll tell you about what it is that he does with his team at BanQu. And I hope that you'll be inspired, and I hope that you will enjoy and that you will want to find out more. So all the way from Texas today at a very early hour of the morning, he has had tea, so he's firing on all cylinders. Sun hasn't yet come up, so hopefully he'll be finished with us by the time the sun rises. So thank you very much for getting up so early. I'm going to hand over to you now. And again, thanks so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jenny, and all of you. Really, thank you for the opportunity. Really blessed to be here. So I'm going to dive straight in. We'll make it interactive. If you have any questions, just stop. If you need to ask, I can take questions at the end. Hope everybody can hear me clearly and see me. What I'm going to do is really have this more of a conversation. I'm not a slides guy. I hate PowerPoint. So we'll just dive straight in and answer three basic questions, which is, what is it that is stopping a continent like Africa from prospering at the bottom of the pyramid? So what is holding back the smallholder mama farmers? What is holding back the informal waste pickers? Why are they still in extreme poverty while the world is claiming sustainability wins everywhere? So we're going to get deep into that, how to solve that problem. We'll talk about blockchain, no Bitcoin. So if you're thinking I'm going to give you some tips on Bitcoin, please jump off. This is a conversation around sustainability, traceability, transparency in global supply chains. And then the third piece is I'm going to talk about the real use cases, right? Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of conversation, there's a lot of white papers, there's a lot of theory, but if it's not real, if you can't actually look a mama farmer on the Zambia-Congo border in her eye and give her the dignity and respect in the real world, then, we're all wasting time. So that's kind of the conversation here today. Again, appreciate the time. So let's start with some building blocks. First and foremost, I grew up in India. I grew up poor, not poor anymore, as you can tell. And I was very fortunate to come to the US, built and sold a couple of startups. And then I found myself in 2013 in the Congo, in DRC. And I was a volunteer there for USAID 2013 and 2014, and working with some amazing mama farmers, artisanal miners, and things like that. Learning a lot because, I thought I knew everything when I sold my last startup. And I kind of realized I didn't really know, because the real world happens in the field, as I say. And at the end of 2014, I got into a fight with a local bank in the DRC. And it was because one of the mama farmers who we were working with for a couple of years, connecting her to supply chains, you were probably paying $4 for a latte thinking it was fair trade, right? And we were all feeling good about ourselves. But the mother wanted to open a bank account. And I thought that was fantastic. Women are smarter than men. If you disagree, please jump off the call. They are. It's just a fact. And this mama said, I want to open a bank account because, you guys are NGOs, as with USAID, you come and go, but our life doesn't really change. And it kind of opened my eyes. So, when I accompanied her to the bank, the local bank said no. And it really bothered me. And so I got into this argument because it makes no sense to not bank this amazing mama farmer in the DRC, right? I mean, you guys know what it is like to be a farmer in Africa. And so I got into this argument, and the guy said, look, I cannot bank her because whatever reason, it was all crazy. It didn't make any sense to me because they said, well, she's a woman. She doesn't have history. She needs to bring her husband. It's crazy stuff, right? And at the end, he said, look, I can't bank her, but I'll bank you. So that's where the name comes from, in case you're wondering, what does BanQu mean? And it was like this massive punch in my gut, right? Because I had this giant head ego thinking that, hey, here I'm in Africa, I can help poor people. And I was absolutely wrong, right? So my first mistake. And at that moment, I also realized that there's a massive flaw in the global supply chain, especially in Africa and other parts of the world. And what is the flaw? One of the things that I've learned in life, right, is explain the problem, and then the solution kind of comes along. A lot of people waste time talking about the solution. I'm actually going to challenge everybody here to really dig deep into the problem, because if you never see me again, I want you to recognize the value of what that mother is going through. So here's the problem. Just make sure we're on the same page here. When that mama is growing her crops, barley, cassava, coffee, or whatever, she cannot prove that she exists in the supply chain. And that's why she's unbankable. And at that moment back in 2014, I kind of realized, wait a minute, I'll just look at myself, had screwed up because we were dumping new technology. We were bringing all this fancy knowledge, design thinking, blah, blah, blah. Yet at the end of the day, this mama farmer couldn't prove her existence in that supply chain, which means she is not bankable, which means the interest rate that the big banks are going to charge her is going to be really, really high. And most importantly, her life is going to keep getting reset. That's when I realized that what if there's a way to ensure that the mama farmer can prove her existence in the supply chain while the big companies who are looking for supply chain traceability and transparency could actually know who the farmer is, right? So the problem, right, and we'll focus on the problem for a couple of minutes, is very simple to explain. There are global brands in the world who are sourcing raw materials everywhere in the world. Let's start with Africa. So we're talking about crops, we're talking about mining, and the list goes on and on. And they have these supply chains that go very deep. Zambia-Congo border, Uganda, Tanzania, Ghana, you name it. Yet the people who work in these supply chains, right? These are the mama farmers. These are the artisanal miners. At no given time can they prove their existence in that supply chain. And that's a flaw, in my humble opinion. And here's why it's a flaw, because that mother then has no leverage. If she has no leverage, she cannot increase her yield. Take a different example. If you're an informal waste picker on the streets of Johannesburg, or if you're an informal waste picker on the streets of Lusaka, and you're picking up bottle, you're picking up plastic, you're picking up paper, and it's making its way back up from you as an informal waste picker to a buyback center, to a processor, to a brand, in that 4 or 5 tier supply chain, what is missing? What is missing is that informal waste picker will never get out of extreme poverty, because nobody is allowing them to prove their existence. Whereas the brands are saying, well, we have traceability and transparency. We're doing sustainability. This t-shirt is completely recycled. But who made the t-shirt? Who picked up the bottle on the streets of Lusaka that we are claiming victory by saying this is a recycled bottle, right? So just to make sure we're on the same page with respect to the problem is easy to describe. There are millions of people who live in extreme poverty today who work in our global supply chains on the sourcing side or the distribution packaging side, who are completely invisible, yet they do the hardest work. So that's kind of the premise, which then led me to start BanQu with my co-founders in 2016, with the simple premise that why not create a supply chain software company for profit, for purpose, didn't want to be an NGO, didn't want to have the pity lens, basic dignity, straightforward business. And the idea we had was, if we create a supply chain that allows that mama farmer or that mama waste picker to prove that she exists, then she now can leverage, get a better access to finance. She can use mobile money. She can get a bank account, get better seed inputs and things like that. So that was kind of the premise. So then we spent some time, like almost a year, looking for a solution. Look, I'm Indian, so I make fun of Indians. I'm like, there's got to be another Indian out there who has an app for poor people. And yes, there were many apps for poor people, but there was a singular flaw in all of the technologies that we looked at. And the flaw was, again, very simple to describe, which is, at no given time in all of these technologies, the mother had rights to her data. Even though she just might have an SMS phone, there is no reason why she should not have access to her data. We assume that poor people are illiterate. I take offense to that, because poor people are extremely smart. If you talk to that mother on the Zambia-Congo border, she is smarter than all of us put together, because she's surviving on $1.90 a day, feeding a family of 4, growing cassava every day, right? So the key element that was missing in all the technologies we looked at is there was more and more technology being dumped on the poor people, yet they never had control of the data. So the software companies had all the access and the mama didn't. So that's when we realized, wait a minute, we don't want to be yet another data dictatorship company. We want to be a data democracy company. So that's when we started BanQu with a for-profit, for-purpose lens, and we started thinking about blockchain. Now I'm going to take a quick pause here, make sure everybody's on the same page in terms of the definition of how we see blockchain. Nothing to do with cryptocurrency. The very basic pedestrian definition of blockchain is that if multiple people participate in a transaction, then all parties get a copy of the transaction. It's very simple. Why does that matter going back to the mama farmer or the waste picker? It matters because if we use blockchain the right way, in the basic definition, as I just said, then she can say, I exist. I exist because I grow barley and I can prove it. And this barley or cassava or sorghum goes all the way to Anheuser-Busch. I'll use real client names, right? Because if it's not real, then this is just a theoretical conversation. So I'm going to talk about two use cases. One is with Anheuser-Busch, so Zambia breweries, Nile breweries, Tanzania breweries, the brands in Africa. I'll talk about Coca-Cola in South Africa, Petco, which is the organization, the PRO. And I want to kind of really make sure everybody's on the same page. Feel free to disagree with me, say, hey, Ashish, this makes no sense, right? I'm just giving you a realistic point of view as to how technology can be used to level the playing field. So going back to that mama farmer, if she's growing cassava or barley or whatever crop is on the Zambia-Congo border, and she's selling that to a cooperative, and then the cooperative is selling it to a transporter, and then the transporter is bringing it to a brewery in Lusaka. It's a 4 or 5 tier supply chain. Again, no technology craziness, just basic supply chain 101, right? If you look at that 4-tier supply chain, if you use traditional technologies, that mama, which is the tier 0, and then the cooperative, which is tier 1, is always blind because the brands don't know who the farmer is, number one. Number two is that they don't know what is the quality of the crop. And number three, if you're really trying to meet your sustainable development goals, like gender equality, reducing poverty, reducing child labor, how can you do that if you don't know the farmer? And that's where BanQu fits in. That's where blockchain fits in. Because if that mama is now going to sell a bag of barley or cassava to a cooperative, then through BanQu, we deliver an SMS message to her SMS phone, no smartphone needed, that confirms that, mama, you're selling 40 kilos of cassava at X% quality parameters at this point. And because it's on blockchain, everybody in that supply chain now has a visible copy of that transaction. It's secured, it's private. But the most important piece here, guys, is that when she sells it, she gets a confirmation through her SMS phone in a way that she can say, I exist, right? If you forgot everything else, forget me, forget BanQu, right? Don't forget this very basic premise that has never been tackled in supply chain, especially in Africa and other parts of the world, that where there's a lot of poverty, but a lot of sourcing is happening of mining materials, agriculture crops, and recycling, right? Which is that when the bag of barley changes hands between the mother and the cooperative, the mother should always, always have the right to say, I sold that, I got paid, or I didn't get paid, or whatever the circumstances is. And that's why we started this supply chain software company, which is pretty simple. A lot of technology in the back end, we have patents, blah, blah, blah. But on the front end, it's plain and simple, which is it's a software as a service, just like you access Netflix. Mama does not need a smartphone. And when she sells that bag of barley, she gets an SMS message that says, you sold this. And why is this important? Because every time she sells it, she starts building a history on blockchain. And that piece is critical. And why that is critical is because that history is what we call is the economic passport. So close your eyes for a second and ask yourself a question. If you walk out of this conversation right now, let's pick on Jenny. If I ask Jenny, walk out of her office and go to the car dealership. But Jenny, you cannot prove that you're with Sapix. You cannot prove your income. you cannot prove your education, and try to get a car loan. What do you think Jenny's experience will be? I'll bet you my life savings that she will get a really, really bad reception at our dealership because she cannot prove her existence. Now put yourself in that mother's shoe and imagine if she's been selling coffee for the last 10 years that you've been paying $5 for a cup of latte, yet the mother cannot prove that she got paid. She cannot prove what the harvest was, and she certainly cannot prove what was the quality of the harvest so she could have gotten an incentive payout. If she cannot prove any of that, the predatory lenders are going to charge her very high interest rate, which means she'll never break the cycle of poverty. So the solution that we have put together, now we're live in over 50 countries, is basic, which is that mother starts building her economic passport that says, I exist. And if you don't trust me, go talk to Anheuser-Busch, go talk to Coca-Cola, because the basic definition of blockchain, as I described, is both parties have the same copy of the transaction. So she can say, this is my history, this is my harvest information, and it is mirrored at the brand level. Now you might be thinking, wait a minute, so what is this? This is kind of confusing. You've gone all over the board here. Take a step back. Supply chain software company, that is what we are, delivered through SMS at the mama's level, and upstream on the supply chain, the brand. So you can put yourself in any big brand. That brand now has visibility to the moving parts in their supply chain. And they're not using BanQu from the kindness of their heart. Guys, I've spent a lot of time in Africa, and one thing I've realized, there's a lot of bleeding heart types, there's a lot of NGOs, and they're all great. We need everybody. But what bothers me always is when we look at people in poverty and have the pity lens, take that pity lens off. Put yourself in the shoes of a company, like an AB InBev, and they have committed that their farmers are going to be skilled, connected, and financially empowered. Why is that? Because they truly believe that that supply chain, if it's traceable, transparent, and equitable, the whole system's going to go up, right? So they are using our platform in Zambia, Tanzania, Uganda, other places, because they now know who's the mama farmer. They now know what is the quality of the crop that's moving. That's good for their business, right? There's a big sign you'll see that says, no barley, no beer. It's business, right? Same thing with the rollouts we've done on the recycling side. Put yourself in the shoes of the informal waste picker on the streets of Lusaka, on the streets of Lagos, or on the streets of Johannesburg, and ask yourself a very basic question. That bottle or can that you pitched off this morning, that somebody picked up, that then made its way back up as a recycling material or returnable, who is that informal waste picker? And why should they continue to be in extreme poverty while you're thinking you're doing good in terms of sustainability? So the reason why we created BanQu was to enable that traceability and transparency in a way that the informal waste picker says, hey, I came and sold 40 bottles. This is my SMS message. Now let's go deeper, right? A lot of people ask us about, well, how does the payment work? And how does the waste picker now get a bank account, right? So let's go there. Africa, awesome in terms of mobile money. In fact, I'm going to share one incident that kind of changed my brain chip, which was in end of 2018 when we were doing this rollout on the Zambia-Congo border. We were still dealing with cash, right? So the mother gets the SMS message, she confirms it, then she can cash out. But one of the mamas came to us and said, guys, this is great. Finally, somebody's actually recognizing that we are farmers here, but the money is still eaten by the rats. And I'm like, what am I missing here? Who are these rats? And they explained, they said, it's the husband, the son, or the brother-in-law is taking the money. And the mama said, if you deposit it directly on our M-Pesa account, and that's when I'm like, whoa, you're way more intelligent than I'll ever be. And it's fascinating, and this is public, I can share it with you. The very first transaction we did, right? Again, I'll keep rewinding so that everybody's on the same page. Mama to the co-op, co-op to the transporter, transporter to the brewery. We integrated with mobile money, Airtel, MTN, Vodacom, mobile money, right? You guys are all familiar with that. The first transaction we did when the mama sells the crop, in addition to the SMS message that she gets on her phone, she got a direct deposit on her mobile money account. And she starts laughing. She starts laughing, and I'm thinking I did something stupid, and I am, right? It's what it is. But she's laughing because she gets the money, she turns around and pays for school fees. She pays for her solar home system. And that's when we kind of realized, wait a minute, not only is this mama farmer extremely smart, but she has opened a leverage point that now she is bankable, because just through that SMS message, she has an income stream coming in that validates her supply chain data. And now she's bankable because she's leveraging it to pay for school fees. She's leveraging it to buy more seed input. She's leveraging it to pay for her solar home system. And that's the key, right? It's not about being cute. It's not about me. It's not about, any of this stuff. It's really to create a supply chain that's equitable so that the mama has an economic passport that's provable. And the brand can now reduce their cost of the supply chain. They now know what is the quality of the crop, or if they're bringing in recycling material. I just came back from Mexico. This is again public. I put it on my LinkedIn profile. Is that the bottles that are coming back in the supply chain, if you connect them to a software like BanQu, not only do you know how many bottles are coming in as recycling material, but you know who are these waste pickers, who are these informal waste pickers. That's one of the biggest success we've had in South Africa, where in the first 10 or 12 weeks, 1 million kilos tracked and traced, and 700 informal waste pickers, right? And why is that piece important? I always stress profit and purpose, because oftentimes we fall in love with the sustainability aspect, right? And I'm probably going to piss off some people here on this call, but there's this romance around sustainability these days. Everybody loves to talk about sustainability, but at the end of the day, I have a very simple question. If you claim that this t-shirt is 100% recyclable, then ask yourself the same question. Who is that person who made this t-shirt? And are they being forced into slave labor? Ask yourself a very basic question saying, if I'm using this iPhone, and if the cobalt is coming from a mine in Benin, who are the children that are being held in child labor, right? So what we have done is address some very fundamental problem, but using a business lens, which is, and this is again public, right? We connect the school attendance system to blockchain. Same example, same supply chain, except now you know where the children are under security guidelines like POPI compliance and GDPR and everything. But if the child is not in school, where is the kid? And the attendance that's taken on blockchain is correlated to the harvest or the picking cycles in terms of the landfills and things like that, right? So just kind of going like a mile a minute here, but I always like to take a step back, set the stage, and then we'll go a little bit deeper. Jenny, how am I doing on time? Am I doing good so far on time?
Doing great.
Fantastic. So supply chain software company built on blockchain, no cryptocurrency, number one. Number two, it serves as a mobile site. So the mother does not need a smartphone. She does not need to download an app, none of that stuff. Local language, local currency. Classic supply chain, which is farmer, co-op, transporter, beer company, or landfill, buyback center, processor, beverage company. Doesn't have to be beverage company, right? So if you look at these two supply chains and you ask yourself the question, if you're truly trying to make it sustainable on the sourcing and packaging side, what are the two key things? It's the asset, which is the bag of barley, or it's the bottle, which is the asset that's coming in as recyclable. But who's connecting the dots? It's the people, right? And that's why at BanQu, we're a big believer in people, organizations, and assets, because if you don't have a supply chain that has all three connected and all three parties in that equation are equal, then you're going to be a sustainability driven company at the material level, not at the people level, right? Take a simple example. You look at the recycling business. A lot of people are talking about tires. A lot of people are talking about plastic and PET and things like that. Walk through the landmines in South Africa. Walk through the landfills or in Lusaka. What will you find? You'll find children, women that are working in these landfills, completely invisible, yet you'll purchase a bottle that says it was 100% recyclable, right? So the disruption or the innovation that we have brought to the table that I'm hoping you guys can see it is that you create visibility for the actors in the supply chain in a way that creates price transparency. It creates traceability so that the brand can say, yes, we have a sustainable supply chain, but we can also tell you who the mama farmer is and who the waste picker is. And at the same time, they have visibility into the material flows in that supply chain, right? Because if you don't do that, then you're only tackling one part of the problem and you're going to ignore. So I'm sure a lot of you, if you're listening in from Nigeria, find out what's going on with battery recycling in your country. Find out what's happening with battery recycling in India. And you'll realize that everybody now wants suddenly to recycle these batteries. But at what human cost, right? And so the value of blockchain, in my humble opinion, is that all it does, if you use it the right way, it gives equal access and validity, right? And I'll tell you about impact, right? So if you look at the case studies, and again, this is public, the recent case study that came out of the Zambia rollout we did 3 years ago and still going on is that this mama farmer now has 12,000 kilos of cassava she's producing. All her children are in school. She has power at home, right? And why is that important? That is important because she's bankable, right? And this part is critical. There's a lot of big banks in Africa and other places that are claiming to help the farmers, that are claiming to bring resources to the farmers. And I ask a simple question. Who owns the data? Can the mother now prove she exists without being at the mercy of the bank or the institutions? The answer is no. Right? So if you're monetizing other people's data and no benefit to the mama, then you shouldn't be in the sustainability business, right? The way we built it is we took a totally opposite approach, is that we don't own data. And this part is critical. Any data wonks on the call here, we don't own data. And that part is important because if we start owning data, then we're no better off than anybody else. So the way we use blockchain is that the mama has a copy of her data, the supply chain has a copy of the data, and the mama can prove it through her SMS. She can permission through her SMS and say, hey, look, this is my history. If you don't trust it, I can show you my harvest data. I can show you my land information. And that is bankable. That is bankable. Going back to Jenny's example, right? If Jenny now walks in with a digital photo that shows, I'm with SAPIX, this is my earnings, this is my education, and the SAPIX team says, yep, we can validate it, the mindset of interacting with Jenny completely changes, because Jenny is not seen as, oh, some poor farmer who is completely vulnerable. No, poor farmers are extremely intelligent. And I know some people are probably thinking on this call, wait a minute, this is blockchain and this is software, and how are all these poor people actually, going to interact, and they're illiterate? And I say time out. First of all, if you're thinking poor people are illiterate, you're not going to be my friend, because I have had these fights with other people where people think that poor people are illiterate. No, I have never met a Congolese farmer or a Ugandan farmer, a Zambian farmer who's not intelligent, right? Everybody knows how to use an SMS phone. The mistake we make, right, because we sit on the top of the pyramid and say, oh, you're illiterate, so I need to have to do something else. No. Everybody uses SMS. Everybody uses M-Pesa or mobile money, whatever it is, right? And they know how to interact with supply chains. The missing link always has been, nobody has said, hey, you have a rightful place in this supply chain. And that's kind of where, as I'm coming to the close here, is that I'm a big believer that big brands need to take their responsibility seriously. That's why, we love working with companies like Islamic Development Bank and Anheuser-Busch and Coca-Cola and other of our clients, is because they take their responsibility seriously in these supply chains, right? So if you talk to the past CEO of AB InBev, Carlos Brito, he just retired, or the new CEO, Michel, they'll tell you, they want to know who their mama farmer is. If you talk to David Drew at Coca-Cola, right? And David, if you're listening, right? The first thing he said to me last year was like, if we did BanQu, I want to know who these informal waste pickers are. I want to know that they have equal rights. And if you take that responsibility seriously, then you can implement platforms like BanQu. And I'm not saying BanQu is the only platform. The only thing that we're unique is that we are addressing a problem that has been ignored across supply chains, especially in Africa when it comes to sourcing and packaging. And the problem is the lack of provable visibility of your last mile workers. And the last mile worker will be a smallholder mama farmer, or it could be an informal waste picker, right? So here's what I'll leave you with. As you go back into your work, this conference has been amazing. Jenny and everybody at Sapix, thank you. Ask yourself a basic question. If you truly are a sustainability wonk, or you're the head of procurement, or you're a CEO, or you're a board member, right? If you cannot ask a simple question and get a simple answer, it's just, who's the mama farmer and who's the informal waste picker? If your team cannot answer that, you have no sustainability rights. Because, and I'm being a little controversial here, but it's true, right? Because if you don't know your supply chain actors, how do you think you're going to claim that this recycled bottle is actually recycled and it's empowering the last mile, right? So let me stop there. Jenny, I'm going to open up for questions if you want to kind of dive in. I know I was like a freight train, too much caffeine this morning.
Hang on. I'm getting horrible feedback here. It's because I've got the wrong headphones in. Listening to you on one computer and watching you on the other. Technology. It was very interesting in Jaco's presentation beforehand when he talked about Africa. In South Africa, we've kind of missed we've gone straight to telephone technology, and we are actually advanced in some ways in this, and yet people think we're not. And so your comments about, everybody knows how to basic use a phone to SMS, etc., is really true. There are some comments here, and it goes back, similar sort of question. Thanks for such a wonderful presentation. This is Elizabeth who's saying the mama farmer in Rwanda who's forced to sell her rice to the distributor and then wait months without any payment. There's another classic example. And Charles is asking the question, what's the cost to the mama farmer?
Great question. So there is no cost to the mama farmer, right? And we're a for-profit company. We just turned profitable last year. We sell software as a service to the brand, and they pay us for all the actors in the supply chain. There is zero cost to the mama farmer. And the benefit to the mama farmer, though, is price transparency, history of the sales, and betterment in terms of, increasing yield, getting better access to seed inputs. But there's no cost to the mama farmer. But it's not free in the sense that, I'm not wandering around Africa trying to sign up farmers and saying, start to use BanQu. No, I just go to the brand, look them in the eye and say, if you're really trying to have a sustainable supply chain, then do you know who the mama farmer is? And that's it. And I get paid for everybody in that supply chain. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think Charles would be happy with that one. And I think as we discussed in the last session was that you have to be careful, because if everything is for free, then there is no value. And
I don't believe in free, right? I mean, I spent 2 years as a USAID volunteer, and I got tired of, all these, I'm American, like Americans showing up, with fancy hats and granola bars. And I'm like, that when you look that mama in the eye, she ain't looking for pity, right? She's like, hey, I'm a good farmer and you better respect that, right? And we have not done that.
Mm-hmm. But I'm glad you used me as an example in the beginning bit, because, when I first moved to South Africa, I came from the UK where there had never been any question as to who I was or my independence and my own bank account, etc. And I came to South Africa, and unless my husband approved my application, I couldn't open a bank account. So, it's not, it's reality, and okay, things have got better, but there is that sense. And I think that the concept of BanQu, just on a fundamental level, is just so clever, really, and so important. And I love the story as to how it came about. Tonya is sort of says a hypothetical question almost, is that your point about almost the conscious brand, is how many companies can actually say that they know the answer to that question. And I think it would be really interesting to put that out there, and how many people will say, yes, I know, and actually they don't at all.
So honest answer is, again, a little controversial, but 80% will claim. And of that 80%, 5%, if that, actually know it, right? So there's this term called greenwashing, right? Again, being super honest, a lot of companies in South Africa are doing it. Everybody in the world is doing it, is greenwashing, right? People will say, hey, this coffee is 100% sourced and, you can tip the farmer, right? I'm like, come on. That mama farmer in Congo still doesn't have a bank account. So if you tip the farmer, why? How? Show me, right? And so there's a lot of greenwashing that happens, right? So 80%, a lot of chatter. Out of that, 5% does the real work.
Yeah. And Bill asks an interesting question, and I think I'm interpreting it right, Bill, is that have you been more successful in any particular field? So go for it. Great
question. So look, I mean, we have learned a lot. I've failed more than I've succeeded in my life, especially since the start of BanQu. And the two areas that we've had tremendous success is sourcing and distribution, which is, crops coming in or products going to the last mile, and on the packaging and recycling side, right? We've those where we've kind of anchored, we have a 51 country footprint now. That's where we've found the most success is sourcing, distribution, and packaging. Other areas we've looked at, but it's at the end of the day, going back to the 80-20, right? You have to have companies that are willing to actually do it. I've talked to companies, again, without sharing any names, mining companies, right, in all around the world, that they want to reduce child labor. And then I show them how BanQu can do it. And then they say, I don't really want to do this because if I implement BanQu, we will uncover child labor and then we're going to have to fix it. And they're like, we're better off not knowing. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it's a great answer. Thank you. As Corey says, absolutely. It's so amazing to see how blockchain is actually empowering people. And I think blockchain has gone from this sort of mystical thing that it's like for people like me of a certain generation, it's too hard even to contemplate, to people like you helping to make it a practical, realistic, achievable a tool that we can all understand and use for benefit. And thank you for separating the cryptocurrency blockchain on a personal note. That immediately I started to listen. Tanya's asking, go.
No, I was just going to add a quick point on that, right? And this is, again, do your own homework. I tell people, right? Don't take my word for it. But there's a lot of companies talking blockchain for poverty, talking blockchain for social impact, right? And I ask a very simple question, is that who owns the data? If you own the mother's data, then you're not using blockchain. Take that away. If you're going to bring tokens to poor people, man, spend some time on the streets of Johannesburg or spend some time on the Zambia-Congo border, right? That mother needs the 40 kwacha, so the kid's going to eat tonight. If you send her a token, completely useless, right? And so, blockchain is not solving the problem, trust me. Because in our opinion, right, is that at the end of the day, the mother could care less if it's blockchain or not, right? What the mother cares about is that, can you give me my right in the supply chain? Can I get the 40 kwacha? Can I prove that I grew amazing barley, that then next season I'm going to get better seeds? Who cares if it's blockchain, right? And I think people have this romance around blockchain, romance around crypto, and suddenly, oh my God, the tokens are going to end poverty. Not true. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, Jenny, but I had to make that point. It's just, I'm very passionate about it.
No, absolutely. And I think it was Kristen Cox yesterday who said that technology is great, but technology is a tool, or those tools are created by technology. It's how they're used that is the answer to the problems. And Tanya's question about how long a company is going to get away without accountability, it absolutely speaks to this, because they won't, to be honest, if they implement this.
Well, they can get away with not being accountable, right? And I'll give you a good example. If you look at the sugar industry all over the world, right? And there are big farming companies that will then have, or the tobacco industry, they'll have workers on the farm, right? This is a live example, right? The question is that you can get away with your triple B, triple E, or double B, triple E, right? Today, because you could say, well, we have enough black farmers, but then my question to you is like, who are the black farmer workers on your field, right? Did they get paid? Did they have safety equipment? And I think that's kind of the greenwashing you see, right? In multiple industries in Africa where people get away by saying, we did the checkbox, right? But the responsibility is with the CEO, in my humble opinion, and the responsibility is with consumer. If you as a consumer walk into a store and buy a pack of sugar or coffee or whatever, right? And if you ask the question, who are the farmers? Did the farmer get paid? And if the brand can prove it, then don't buy it, right? Now, the consumer mindset has to also change. So the accountability lies on two sides. I'm kind of giving you a very deep answer, but it's important because it's the real world.
On mute there. Yeah, great. Thank you. Welcome, Paul Bothmer. Welcome to the SAPIX community. He's a local BanQu team person, and he's in the house today. So I think that if you hang around during our lunch break, people might forego their coffee or their sandwich to come talk to you at one of the tables in the lounge, which would be very cool.
Yes, we opened our South Africa office last year, and it's been incredible. That team has been phenomenal, and they've been supporting our entire Africa and then Asia rollout right out of South Africa. So they're
I
amazing.
mean, a 51 country footprint is something to be pretty proud of, I reckon. And as we were saying, talking backstage, you've just come back from Mexico and you're next week on your way to Colombia. So, lack of travel, etc., doesn't inhibit this dynamo as he travels around the world.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm being honest, we give ourselves way too much credit, right? I mean, in the big picture, I'm a nobody. I'm an absolute nobody. I hope nobody remembers me. What I do want to leave you with is that pandemic or no pandemic, the mother still has to grow barley so kids can eat, right? And then the brands, if they truly believe in sustainability, right, then have a for-profit, for-purpose lens, right? And that you have to be deliberate, like the brands that we work with, right? Otherwise, you're going to have brands that will do a lot of talk, but not then execute.
Yeah, and Clayton, you've absolutely given me the perfect thing to finish up on, which is real passion. Real passion. And thank you so much for sharing not the theoretical experience, it's real practical experience. Your passion for being out in the field, meeting the people and making a difference just shines through, even in this online, or maybe particularly because of this online environment. I can't thank you enough for sharing this with us, taking the time, especially early in the morning. It's twice now I've asked you to do stuff for us, and I'm really, really grateful. But lots of food for thought, as Clayton says, lots of stuff for us all to take away. And at the end of the day, lots of lessons for us to think about the stuff that we're buying. And going back to Yaku's presentation, think about what's in the food we eat. Think about how the things that we buy are made. The conscious consumer is not just it's not anybody who hugs a tree anymore. It's, or was that vegetarians? I can't remember. But anyway, the soft and fluffy bit's gone. We've really got to think if we really want to make a difference. And people like you keep reminding people like me of that. So thank you very much for that.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity. Super blessed to be here. The one thing I will say, right, which I should have said up front is, you guys already know this, it's been said multiple times, but one thing hasn't been said. Everybody says Africa is the continent, right? In terms of opportunity, you have resources, you have land, and it's self-sufficient, The missing piece is that the supply chains that come in and out of Africa are not equitable, right? So the only thing I would request you is that if you truly believe in a powerful Africa, then your supply chains have to be equitable. BanQu is one way to do it, but that's the key piece, right? Because everybody's taking resources from Africa, but at what cost? That's it.
At what cost? Yeah. So brilliant. Thank you so much. And you can go get more coffee now, or wind down from the coffee that you had. I don't know, but thank you so much. And if you do, or if Paul is around, then please go to the lounge, find a table, grab a seat, see if you can nobble Ashish along the way, and I'll see you in the lounge. But thanks very much, everybody, for stopping, listening, and for being so interactive. As I keep saying, without this interaction and these blue floating thumbs up, we don't know whether we're hitting the mark or not. I mean, I know, because how could Ashish fail to inspire? But thank you all very much for your participation. It's really appreciated.
Thank you. Take care.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much.